Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm Mark Thompson with Watermark Data, and these are the Alteryx tutorials. This session is going to be on weekly challenge number 41, and it's a little bit of a challenge, more than you might expect. In this case, you've got employees that are paid twice monthly. And for each month and pay period, you want to calculate the number of weekdays that make up the pay period. Exclude the weekend. All right. We have a set of data over here in our text input, and this is the start of the month. This is the end of the first 2-week period. This is the start of the second 2-week period, and this is effectively the end of the month. So it always starts on January, and we go from January of 13 to February of 15. And it will always end on the 15th of the month. And the second period always starts on the 16th of the month and then varies in terms of when it ends. So let's take a look at how we break this down. The first thing we need to do is take a look at this date format and understand that this date format doesn't follow the Alteryx standard daily format. So we need to first change that format. And so we've got 4 formulas in here, and they are all effectively the exact same formula. And it is doing a date time parse. And I could have used a different tool. I could have used the date time tool to do this, but I want to do it all in one tool. And so I take the date time parse for PS1, period 1 start, period 1 end, period 2 start, period 2 end, P1S, P1E, P2S, P2E. And I turn this into, I grab this and I go percent month, percent day, percent year. And I do it in that format because that is what the format is that it's coming in, and it will kick out the Alteryx format. So we do this 4 times for each one of these days. Straightforward enough. Next, I simply use the select tool and deselect those. So here I had both of them. Here I deselect, and you can see that it's just the 4 dates. This formula tool is where things get a little bit interesting / complicated. But to break it down, here's what you have. You have your 4 dates. And then I break it down into 2 pieces here. See where it says P1? So I get a differential. I do a day 1 start. I do a day or a day stop for section 1. Weekend days for section 1, work days for section 1. Then do the exact same thing for period 2. So period 2 differential. Then the day start for period 2, the day stop for period 2, the weekend days, and the work days. So let's get into it here a little bit. How to identify the P1 difference or the P2 difference. It's the same thing. I'm going to work down here in P2. So we do the date time difference between those two, between the end and the start, and we identify it in days, and then we add 1. That gives you how many days are in the month, because the time difference would be the difference, but you want to include the starting day as well, not just simply effectively a subtraction that says, hey, if I start on the 1st and I end on the 15th, well, that would say 14 days, but you want it to say 15, or in this particular case, 16. The next thing you do is say, okay, I want to put this, the days of the week. I want to know what day of the week this starts. And that's how you do this. So you say a date time format, and PS1 is right here. So a date time format of PS1, and %U is a number 1 through 7 starting with 1 on a Monday. And I will include the following link in our challenges. And this breaks down the specifiers within Alteryx. And as you come down here, you can see %U, day of the week, decimal 1 through 7. Now there's 2 columns here, one for the date time format, and then there's one for date time parse. We're not doing date time parse, we're doing date time format, and then we're using the lowercase u. And again, I will put this link in the down below the video. All right, coming back over here. So that tells me what day of the week I'm starting out. Then it tells me date time format again. What day of the week am I ending? And again, it's a 1 through 7 with 1 being a Monday. So 6 and 7 are Saturday, Sunday. And then I want to turn that actually, and I did this with the prior one, I didn't mention it. But you want to turn that into a number. Okay, so you have numbers instead of days that you're working with. Here's where the meat of it arrives. Now, for the first, if you take a look at the days here, I always have 15 days in the first session. It always starts on the 1st, ends on the 15th. It is the second session where you get a lot of variance. I used the same formula in both of these. So I only had to write a formula once. I didn't have to think through and try and go, well, I want certain rules for this one, and I want certain rules for the second one. The second one is the one that's more complicated and needs all of that, but it captures and comprises everything that I would find in the first one as well. And what it has to do is it has to take into account what day of the week it starts and what day of the week it finishes and how many. And let's go over here to this second group. Okay. How many days? This is the P2, the period 2 difference. So I could have as many as 16 days. For example, if I started and finished on the 31st, then I'm going to have 16 days, right? I can also have as short as 13 days. If I've got, and the 13 days, it's kind of obvious it'll all be in February, right? It ends on the 28th, February. If I come down here a little bit further, where is it? There. February 28. Now, this didn't happen to encompass a year that had a leap year, which would have had 29, which would have included a 14-day. So primarily, you're going to have either 28, 30, or 31. So you're going to have 13 days, 15 days if it's a 30-day, or 16 days. What day of the week does it start? What day of the week does it finish? And that provides different calculations for the number of weekend days. And so what we have here is I could have written out else if, if it starts on this day and ends on this, if it starts on this and ends on this. Instead, what I've chosen to do is do a number of calculations based on dividing it and rounding it by 7 and then multiplying how many weekends. So for example, you might start on a Saturday, and let's find one that does. You might start on a Saturday and only have 13. Well, it stops on day 4, which is a Thursday, right? And so you've got Saturday and Sunday of the first week, Saturday and Sunday of the second week, and so you end up with 4. And each one of these calculations takes into account a different aspect. So what day does it start? How many days does it add? And then divided by 7. And I ask, is that an integer? Well, if it is, then take the floor. That means if you've got a fraction, it will take the lower of those two numbers. And it will say, okay, divide the difference by 7 times 2 and potentially plus 1. So if this is the case, each one of these provides for a different, and it covers each one of these different, and I'm not going to go through each one of these formulas, but it accounts for when it starts, when it stops. And a lot of times you might have 5 days, right? So it starts on a Sunday, ends on a Sunday. So you're including that first Sunday, you're including the middle Saturday and Sunday, and you're including the final Saturday and Sunday. So you're going to end up with 5 days. And if I look here, I might start on a Friday, and I get, in this case, 16 days. So I capture the first weekend, the second weekend, plus that Saturday on the second weekend, on the third weekend, excuse me. And then it might start on a Saturday and go through 15 days to the second Saturday. So all of these calculate it out and identify how many, rather than trying to come up with 30 different else if, else if, else if, else if. Hope that's clear. I can expand this here just a little bit and let you take and study this whole formula. All right. But if you want to know why I went through doing it this way, that's how and why. All right. And then the final formula in here on both of these two is, after I know how many weekend days, I just simply say, okay, well, how many days do I have in differential and minus the weekend? And that gives me how many working days I have. So when you look across, I've got my work days. Well, I've got my differential. I've got my starting day, my ending day, how many weekend days I've got, and then finally, how many work days does that result in? And I merely export it. I sent it to a spreadsheet in this case, or you can do it to a browser, and that should wrap up right there. All right, again, my name is Mark Thompson. This is Alteryx Tutorials Weekly Challenge number 41. And if you like what you see, hit share. If you like what you see, hit like. And as always, please provide any comments to help you out. See you next time.